Suffering. Suffering. It is not the problem that causes suffering. Sometimes it's our thinking of the problem that causes suffering. As much as we would like to help others to avoid pain, sometimes we have to let them and allow them to receive the pain because in that pain, there's a lesson. So to me, and to many of you guys, suffering is one of the greatest teachers of life. There's this gift. And today I'm gonna be having Alma join me, and we're gonna be talking about the gift of suffering. Give me a second here. Oh, they changed it. How do I add you on? Okay. All right. Emma from Europe is gonna join us. Hi.
Hi, Rosie.
How are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
Great, great. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Anna, and I'm a London-based life coach. I serve entrepreneurial women who are busy juggling motherhood and trying to find balance in their life, in their business, in their homes, and within themselves. Yeah.
Great, nice. And so today we're gonna be talking about suffering. What is suffering to you, and what causes suffering?
Suffering is probably the most universal emotions that we all experience. Whether you're from a super wealthy background to the poorest background, you have the best health, you have access to all sorts of comforts. We all absolutely suffer. We all experience suffering. Suffering can be natural causes of suffering, like you've been diagnosed with a terminal illness, or you've broken your arm and hurt yourself, even down to us as mums. The suffering of bringing a child into the world is painful. And then there are some suffering that's self-inflicted, or that it is the unwillingness to let go of what is and accept it. It's the resistance that our mind holds on to try and make changes to things that don't meet our expectations, or we have a different reality for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And why do you think a lot of us now are just suffering so much?
I think we suffer as much as we do now, Rose,
Mhm.
because life is pretty convenient and fairly easy for us. We have endless amounts of running water. We have endless amounts of electricity. We have access to whatever we want in a heartbeat. You just go on Amazon Prime, you order it, it's here the next day. So we're so used to convenience and instant access to anything and everything that we want, that the slightest thing that doesn't come to us straight away causes us suffering. It's also maybe a little bit of society now has conditioned us to believe that suffering is not normal. So, for instance, the minute anybody has the slightest headache, you can take a painkiller for it. And there's a painkiller for almost any kind of slightest suffering. But actually, like the title of your talk, there is a gift in suffering. And there is a gift in being present in the suffering, because the suffering gives you access to wisdom, insights about yourself, your reality, the circumstances that you're in. And through the suffering, very often is where we get our evolution and growth.
Yes.
So suffering has there's a real gift in suffering sometimes. And there's a real message and wisdom in suffering. And it's not necessary to always try to escape suffering, but
Right.
rather to be present with suffering and just feel it, because it is very much part of life. Suffering also changes from being a painful experience to actually a gift. Like we describe, nothing lasts forever. Pleasure doesn't last forever, and nor does suffering last forever. Everything is changing and shifting, whether we like it or not. So for me, it's important to learn to build resilience and coping skills with suffering, and just allow it to pass and live its course. Yeah.
Yeah. And that reminds me of like the lotus flower of the Buddhist teaching, you know, because the lotus flower, before it blooms into a flower, where it's in the mud, right?
Yeah.
And once it's in the mud, it's like, just imagine us being in the mud, and you know, it's like dirty, it's sticky, it's like there's like resistance there. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, like it's dark.
Hmm.
And a good gardener knows how to make good of the mud, right? Because he
Absolutely.
knows how to tend to the mud. Like he knows like the mud is gonna bring out this beautiful flower. But a lot of us are stuck in that mud, and then we try to run away from that mud,
Mm.
you know?
So true.
But and when we run away from this mud, as in like, you know, running away from this mud means like watching TV to numb this pain, eating foods to numb, to get away from this feeling
Yeah.
or emotion. So instead of being with the suffering
Yes.
and the pain and the emotions and the feelings,
Hmm.
um, it's learning to like to embrace it, to nurture it,
Hmm.
to understand, why am I suffering?
Yeah.
Why is this pain here?
Hmm.
You know, but a lot of us push this pain away
Hmm.
in many ways. In, you know, we run away from it. So it's
Yeah.
learning to go within, because when you look directly at the pain or the mud or the root of the cause, there's some wisdom and power in it, right? So it's learning to listen to our own suffering and to understand it. And when we understand our suffering, we suffer less. And
So true.
when we suffer less, we're able to like have compassion and understanding for ourselves.
Mm.
So letting go of the suffering is the suffering itself. Is
Yeah.
being in the moment, is being in the pain, is being in the process of this, you know, feeling like mud is like
Mm.
around you. But after we get out from the mud, because we're all seeds, it's like this beautiful flower, this
Yeah.
wisdom that you got from this pain.
That is so that is so beautifully put, Rose, together with nature and how nature works. You know, a seed needs to go in a very dirty, muddy, yucky soil to bloom into something wonderful. So there is space in life to feel everything, you know, to feel it, all the experiences. It's not just to be available for joy, but also to understand that a seed cannot germinate into becoming the plant that it needs to be without a bit of suffering. So suffering actually makes us also appreciate happiness, because when you overcome suffering by going through suffering and experiencing some kind of suffering, there's a lot of joy and celebration on the back of healing and recovering from suffering. I was once broken, I had once fallen, but now I'm up. There's
Yeah.
nothing more exciting in life than a hero's journey. But that hero's journey is a hero because they got knocked down and picked themselves back up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you watch a movie and you enjoy the movie because of all the action, it's because there's some suffering in there. If the hero just had a gorgeous life, everything was perfect, it wouldn't be interesting. But definitely suffering allows us to savor the goodness and the happy times, and to appreciate it, to appreciate it, and to appreciate it. Yeah. So
Yeah. To to appreciate suffering.
mm.
Yeah. How many of us actually appreciate suffering?
I know, right, Rose? We will all put our hands up to, if you know, you were asked the question. I've got two envelopes here. Which, this one contains joy, that one contains suffering. Which one do you want? Everybody's going to go for joy.
Joy. Yes.
Nobody will put their hand up to receive pain. But if we could also see that some of the greatest gifts in life has come from enormous pain, like childbirth. You know, if we knew how painful it was, we might have not signed up for it, Rose. But
Right.
we
We knew it's gonna be painful, but we
we
still.
knew, but we didn't understand. You know, we didn't have a dial for the pain. we knew it would be painful, but we didn't
Yeah.
actually know how painful it would be. But on the other side of the pain, there's pleasure. So for instance, even maybe going to university or studying a course or graduating in anything, before that person stands up on the graduation podium, they've gone through a lot of suffering, dedication, discipline, you know, locking themselves away down to learn something new. And also recovery from anything, whether you've been through bereavement or substance abuse, just being able to come back when you're down is the
Yeah.
greatest joy. And you live more present and you feel more alive than ever because you've overcome suffering.
Right. Yeah. And it's like overcoming suffering. How do you overcome suffering? What overcome how can we help one person overcome suffering?
Mm. That's such a good question, Rose. And it's different for everybody,
Yeah.
you know, different strategies for everybody. But what I will say we all have in common as a hack for overcoming suffering is to first and foremost accept that suffering is a part of life. There are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days, just like there's spring and there's summer. It's just a season. And that this too shall pass, this season shall pass. The other way of also surrendering to suffering is to open up suffering, break it apart, dissect suffering, and just try to see, what am I supposed to learn from this? I'm here suffering now, but what am I supposed to learn from it? Because suffering is like pulling a diamond out of a rock. It's a mess, right? It's just a rock. But
Mm-hmm.
how can I chisel all the, like you described, muddy, sticky, soggy stuff away? Maybe sometimes I even have to stay in it for a little while. And then
Yeah.
I have to stay a little while because in staying in it, I'm growing, right? But
Mm-hmm.
so it's just to accept the suffering is a part of life. Suffering is here to help you in some way or another. It's a powerful tool for moving you forward. And also, suffering is the biggest motivator for change.
Yes.
You know, you can be told stop smoking, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can't smoke, you can't quit. You feel like you can't quit. Your brain tells you I can't quit. But when you get that medical report that confirms that you're suffering from lung issues and you have to quit, suddenly it makes something that you thought you can't, I absolutely can't. So it's really transcending. It helps you to push when you're able to stay with the suffering and set your goal and intention on overcoming suffering. It
Oh,
helps you to make
yes.
change that you've always wanted to but thought you couldn't. So the suffering is necessary for your growth.
Oh, it is really necessary for our growth.
Yeah.
And to me, to witness, say a parent or somebody you're close to suffering. Like I see my mom suffering, and it's like, how can I help her suffer less, right?
Mm-hmm.
To us, we want to take her pain away, her seeing her suffering. I want to take it away,
Mm.
but that's not my. I can have my opinion
Mm.
on, you know, like her suffering.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm trying to get this straight here. Hold on. Um, so say if we see somebody suffering, right? Sometimes we want to take their pain away from them,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes it's their soul's journey to
Mm-hmm.
go through that pain
Wow, Rose.
because they had to go through that pain because there's something that their soul needs to learn, to
Yes.
to evolve
Oh, I
in.
love that.
And it has nothing to do with us, right? But we get our feelings
Oh.
attached. We get our feelings attached to the person,
Mm.
because as people, we want to fix things. We
Yeah.
want to fix people, but it's learning that it's not about fixing people, right? They make their own choice.
Yeah.
But how can we help them suffer less,
Yeah.
right? By it's deep listening.
Mm-hmm.
It's by listening to, if you really listen, they're telling you they're sad,
Mm.
they're hurt, they're anger.
Yeah.
You know, it could be from childhood that they're carrying on this energy of. So I guess to the point where I'm going, because I kind of got lost in there, but the point is that when we see our parents suffer,
Mm.
it's learning how can we help them suffer less,
Mm.
because we can't fix their suffering,
Mm.
because it's their soul's journey to go through what they have to go through, because there's something waiting for them. There's a beautiful lesson, a beautiful wisdom and strength that they're going to come out of this.
Mm.
But sitting here and seeing them suffer, it's not a good feeling.
No.
And then it's like, okay, so how can we like, what do we do when we see somebody else suffering?
Rose, you've given me a personal gift in what you've just shared, actually, because like you, I'm also a massive empath, and I want to heal everybody and take everybody's suffering away. But I never actually connected that their suffering is their suffering, and maybe an important part of their destiny. You know, that's how they're going to evolve into the next version of them. So rather than try to change what is, just be around and be available to reach out when they ask for help, but not to try and avoid their suffering, because perhaps their suffering is important. I'm assuming you're talking about certain decisions that our parents make that maybe we don't agree with. I'm not talking about seeing my mother ill and I'm watching her suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have a common shared story there. Yeah, that's true. But most of all, Rose, I think I really appreciate, like, as a mum. So when my children were younger, you know, you take them out and they don't want to be in the pushchair anymore. They want to walk, but they're falling
Yeah.
every 2 steps. And what you want to do is just to pick them up and carry them, but you have to let them down and walk and fall a little bit, and they cry. And you ask the question, how do we make them suffer less? We pick them up and hug them and let them understand that I see you, I hear you, I'm here. You carry on, mama's here, you know, keep going. You're falling, but you're doing a great job. Keep going. So I think that's how we help people to suffer less, by just letting them know that we're around, they're not alone, and that we're proud of them, and just to say some words of encouragement and radiate love and support. That's how we
Wow.
help people. Yeah.
Yes. You just gave me like this like thought of like, oh dude, I need to call my mom now. Wow. That
Yeah.
was beautiful. That was beautiful. And that, right? That's life.
That's
Since
nice.
we were a baby learning how to walk,
Mm,
like we have to learn to fall, get hurt,
mm.
but then you learn how to walk, and then the next step in life, and it's like all these chapters in life.
And there's always pain, you know. And I always love the analogy of seeing life through a newborn's journey, you know, in the way that at some point they grow teeth and we're up at night with them. We can't stop their suffering of their teeth coming through, but
Yeah.
we just let them know it's okay, cry, I'm here. You know, you try to
Yes.
put some soother on it to make it better. Is that better? You know,
Yes.
they just, I think what anybody who's going through suffering, the best assistance to easing the suffering is to know that they've got support around them.
Mm, love that. Yes.
They've got love.
Absolutely.
They've got love. You're going through something. I see you. Even if it's one person that says, I recognize that you're in pain. And that suffering can be the loss of a broken dream, or, you know, separation from a partner, or even just a change in identity. You know, like a lot of us women have issues about losing our old self before we became mothers, or when the children are older, the suffering of aging, you know, and all these expectations we have of expectations of ourselves and our youthfulness and our youth going away. But even if you have one person that reminds you that you're important, your pain matters, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, I'm here for you, that I think ease the suffering. And also, I think it helps to remember or have a vision and a passion for life that you can focus on, as opposed to focusing on the pain. So it's not focusing on the pain, it's focusing on where you're going through the pain, because the pain will pass, but you're going somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pain will pass. This too shall pass.
This too shall pass
Yeah.
indeed.
And so what gifts does suffering give you?
What gifts? Oh, what a great question. Wow. So many, Rose. Let me just think so I can serve you properly with this question. So many. The gifts that suffering has personally given me is to remind me that I'm capable of powerful things. I'm stronger than I remember. Sometimes I forget, and the suffering reminds me that I'm super strong. It reminds me that when I need to be, I can be my own superhero, right? Suffering also reminds me to go inwards, Rose. And within me, all I need for any situation to overcome suffering is within myself. So I need to go inwards and bring it out. You know that I'm a spiritual person, so suffering pulls me closer to God and reminds me to be more prayerful and have those conversations. Suffering reminds me also to, for me, build my community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that I will learn something, draw the map, and help somebody who's going through what I've been through. So the more recent suffering that I've experienced is the suffering of bereavement. You know, I lost my father, and I don't. I've had people close to me die, and I've had people lose their parents as well. And I thought I understood the pain, but I didn't really understand it. Now I realize you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and now I know it. I feel like I can be a support and a guide for somebody else to navigate through their suffering. And that's a big gift, to overcome your own suffering so you can help somebody behind you going through it. For me, that's amazing.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Because when we recognize our suffering, we're able to like understand what's going on. And when we understand and have the compassion and kindness, we're able to help others with it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, like the gift of suffering that I learned from it is that suffering goes very deep into the roots, right? It goes very deep into the roots of like our ancestral. And it's like the
So true.
healing of like my grandmothers and great great grandmothers
Oh,
that are calling us, are
yes.
calling us to recognize that they've been suffering and this has been connected. We're all
Yeah.
been connected, and it's learning to find like the wisdom in suffering, the
Yeah.
wisdom in pain, and learning to experience all the emotion that suffering gives you.
Mm.
Pain, suffering, all the emotions, crying, and to
Mm.
feel all those emotions that we have suppressed. That is life. That is how we get over our suffering. Well, not get over our suffering, but that's how we get through our suffering.
Mm.
Is suffering itself. Is
Mm.
feeling the pain and the
Oh, yeah.
crying, the sadness, the anger, and just be with those feelings and let it out.
Yes.
And once you let it out in that suffering, there's a release
Mm.
of space that you're able to have more joy and happiness in you. Like you're
Mm.
able to release the pain and suffering from
Yes.
the past.
Mm.
So suffering is a gift. It's learning how it can be a gift for you. It's
Mm.
learning to understand it, and how can we help others suffer less.
Yes. Yes. I really love what you said about generational suffering, Rose. And on the other side of looking at generational suffering, some of our suffering also sometimes doesn't belong to us. And when the suffering comes up, we're able to interview the suffering and say, whose suffering is this? This isn't mine. And unroot it and dig it out from ourselves, because that was for the previous generation. But when we know better, we do better and understand that we are free, but I don't need to carry the suffering of the previous generation. It's not my reality. You know,
Yes.
somebody's experience is not my reality, so I don't need to suffer for it. It's a generational suffering and that doesn't belong to me. So it's quite good to look at the suffering, you know, again, examining the suffering. Why are you here? You don't belong to me. This is not mine, you know.
Yes.
And another thing about suffering that I really appreciate is very often when we're doing this kind of work, we talk about having unshakable faith and confidence and self-worth and all sorts of things. And on a sunny day, that's so true. But then suffering gets us the opportunity to test these skills. You know, faith is not faith until you get to test it, right? Mm-hmm. Faith untested is not faith. But you get, you know, power untested is not powerful. You don't know. But until you need it, you need these tools, you need these strengths and skills that you built up over the years. It's a wonderful opportunity to test them, grow them, polish them, revive them, renew them, and stack on top of it, build new strength. Where you thought you're powerful, you become even more powerful. Yes. Where you thought you're strong, you become even stronger. You know, it's like suffering of being physically fit. So you know, we both like a workout. On the other side of the pain, you're growing a muscle, and it's quite nice to be able to see how strong the human body is and how it's connected to the mind, and that we can almost have an outer body experience of the pain. You know, when the pain hits, Muhammad Ali says, when the pain hits, that's when you start counting, because you can actually trick the brain also to say, right, I'm actually not in pain. I can keep going, you know. So it builds momentum, it builds power, and it's what gets you to your next level. Yeah.
Yes, it's what gets you to your next level. I love that, because sometimes I can channel my pain,
yes,
into a positive direction. Mm-hmm. Is using that pain as a force for goodness.
Yay.
And it's like a driving force.
Yes.
Right? Because we all have the tools. You can use pain as an evil way. And, mm-hmm. you know, if you're in pain, you can make other people suffer and be in pain too, just because you're bleeding on other people. But it's learning to transform that pain into something more positive, more wisdom. Mm-hmm. That was good, Amma.
We're either moving towards pleasure or away from pleasure, or we're either moving away from pain or towards something painful, one way or another. And I think it's important not to have any fear about suffering. Yes. Because anything worth having in life, on the other side of it, there's also suffering. Falling in love there's suffering in falling in love.
Yes, there is.
You know, on the other side of anything with extreme pleasure, there's suffering, Rose. So really, at the end of the day, there is a massive gift in suffering, because on the other side of suffering, there's enormous pleasure. So suffering is not always bad. It's just how we frame it in our minds. And we need to have a paradigm shift in our mindset. Yes. To accept that where there's suffering does not necessarily mean pain. It can also mean extreme pleasure. It can also mean massive rewards and benefits, even more so than avoiding suffering.
Oh, right. Yes, I love that. Anastasia says, well said, pain makes you a stronger person.
Yes, Anastasia. It certainly does. Anastasia, would you like to come on? Rose, can you send her a request?
Okay. Rosie Rose Grasshopper is becoming the master. Okay, let's see.
Anastasia's been through some suffering. She's got loads of experience on suffering, and she might want to say a few words.
Barbie, would you like to come on and talk about some suffering? Give us some words.
Hey, Anastasia.
Hi. Can you see my face? I don't.
No.
There you go.
How are you, love?
I'm good. How are you? I'm chilling on my sofa,
Oh,
recovering from COVID.
you still got COVID. How many days has it been?
It's been 2 weeks now. I'm in the clear now, but I'm still a bit sinuses, but I'm okay now. Hi, Rose. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Anastasia.
Anastasia, I love what you said about pain makes you stronger. Can you give us an
Mm.
example of a recent pain that you've experienced that made you stronger?
Yes, and you know that one. Being in a toxic relationship.
Okay, toxic relationship. What was your experience of a toxic relationship? When did you notice it was toxic for you?
Um, when I realized I was getting weaker
Mm-hmm.
in myself, and yeah, so I felt more weak because I'm a very positive, bubbly person,
Yes.
not really big-headed, but I noticed he was draining me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
bringing me down.
Yeah.
So I knew there's something's not right here. I don't want to be here. Don't want to be with this person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be on my own. So yeah, it was painful having to go through that. But sometimes in life we go through stuff, then we reflect back and say, yeah, we suffered in pain,
Mm-hmm.
but then it makes you a stronger person. It,
Um, that's so true, Anastasia. And first of all, well done to you for knowing
oh, thank you.
threshold of suffering. Because suffering, we're talking about suffering, the gift of suffering. And
Mm,
there's strength in suffering, but too much suffering also can be disruptive. And I want to applaud you and
hmm
acknowledge you for knowing when your level of that's enough, and you bring yourself up again.
Yeah.
What would you say was the gift that you took from this particular suffering at this time in life? What
Uh,
did you learn about yourself that you didn't know?
that I didn't know.
Or that it
Oh,
was confirmed for you?
the gift I've learned is that I'm strong enough
Yes.
to end that relationship, to say enough is enough.
Yes, darling.
Yeah. And that's one thing I keep been praising myself recently because I know I've been ill with COVID, but I've just learnt to say, sorry, you can't catch it over the camera.
Yeah, Rose, let's cover our nose.
Put your mask on quick. Now I've been praising actually self-talk and actually praising yourself is works wonders because it actually makes you realize that you know what, you've done so well. You are a strong person to end that relationship after a year. And I'm like, yeah, you've done, and good for you that you've noticed the signs of
Yes.
toxic people and that you've done something about it. You didn't stay in that relationship. You understand? I think I've become a stronger person over the years because I'm like, my history. I've been married, abusive marriage, whatever. And yeah, and sometimes I used to look up and say, God, why do you let me suffer?
Yeah.
But then he's made me into a stronger person, basically.
Anastasia, thank you so much for sharing your suffering, and your message, your story really matters. Somebody's listening
Mm,
now and they're in a toxic relationship,
I
and
know.
they're
There's
not
so many.
strong enough
Mm,
to end their suffering because maybe they don't believe
mm,
themselves enough. You said that you knew you were strong, you're powerful. What would you
mm.
say are the first few steps for ending a toxic relationship? Like, what are the first 2 or 3 things that somebody can do to empower themselves?
Well, reflecting back what I did, I said to myself, you only got one life. You deserve better.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
And you can do this.
Wow, that's powerful. You've only got one life. You deserve
You only got
better.
one life
And
to enjoy.
yes.
And it's about me, not anyone else. I know we got kids, family, whatever. But if If you don't look after yourself, who's going to look after your children?
Mm.
That's the most important thing. So yeah, that's how I looked at it as well. My kids need me, so that's yeah.
What a
So
wonderful,
so
wonderful message.
yeah, that's how I do. And I've come across so many women in toxic relationships, and it's funny I could help them, but when it comes to myself, sometimes it's just.
That's
But yeah, but I know that you can only put up with so much in life, the suffering, as we are talking about suffering.
yeah.
But that suffering makes you, say, a more stronger person, because it's like enough is enough.
Yeah.
You know, it's about me. So yeah,
So
no more pain.
now that you've learned all these powerful things about yourself, right?
Yeah.
That you deserve better and you matter and it's about you.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to use this suffering going forward in your next relationship? What are the signs that you like? Would you look for in your next relationship?
Someone who values me and respects me like I do for myself.
Mm.
Yep. I never rush into a relationship like I do. So yeah. So my phone's ringing. Oh,
Anastasia,
it's my mummy.
you're
It's my mum.
you're an absolute star. Thank you so much for coming to share that
Thank you,
Thank
wisdom.
darling.
you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
Thank you,
absolutely.
Anastasia. Thank you
Take
for
care.
sharing.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you
That's
for your
okay.
share. You're
You
amazing.
can push the X button in the corner.
Sorry, my phone's ringing. I didn't hear that one.
You
Sorry.
can press the X button so you can answer your phone.
Oh, okay, cool, lovely.
All
Okay.
right.
Take
See you,
care.
Bye.
darling.
Bye.
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 Wasn't that wonderful, Rose?
That was wonderful.
She's so
Wow.
amazing. She's so amazing. Anastasia is a lovely client of mine that I've been coaching for a few weeks, and
I think Alma is lost. I don't know if it's my connection or hers, but wow, suffering, the gift of suffering. What I want to leave with you guys today is recognize and be aware when you are suffering. And that is a time where, you know, there's wisdom and power in that. So next time suffering comes up, pops up, recognize it, be aware of it, and ask question. Ask deep question. Where is the suffering coming from? Right? Be with it. Be kind to yourself. Bring that understanding and compassion to the suffering. If you need to feel those emotions in that present moment, maybe it's crying, maybe it's yelling, maybe it's shouting, maybe it's just sadness or any emotion, feel it. Be with it. Don't run away from it. Don't watch TV. Don't go and eat a cookie. Be with you. It's calling you to go within yourself, to come within. Meet that little girl, little boy that's inside of you. So think of suffering as a gift. Next time you suffer, recognize it, be aware with it, be with the emotion, feel those emotions, be with it, and release it. Because when you let go of those emotions that's heavy, you have room for joy, for happiness, to create, to have more clarity in life. So that's it. My name is R to the O to the SIE. Thank you for tuning in, and I'm out.